So good afternoon everybody and welcome to York Festival of Ideas 2025. My name is Laura Yeoman. I am Access and Digital Engagement Archivist at the Borthwick Institute for Archives here at the University of York, and I'm going to be chairing the event today. And it's my great pleasure to welcome you all to the University and to the Festival of Ideas. If you've been to any events with us before this week, you will know I've got a couple of pieces of housekeeping to do first before I introduce our speakers. So first of all, in the unlikely event of the fire alarm going off, please follow the steward's instructions and evacuate the venue via the closest available exit. So we'll just follow what the stewards tell us today. And inevitably, can I please ask you just to double check that your phones are on silent for me as well, so everybody dives into their bags. Whilst you're doing that, I'm delighted to introduce this event that celebrates the comedic genius of Ray Galton and Alan Simpson, showcasing the archive acquired by the Borthwick Institute at the University in 2024. Gary Brannan, Keeper of Archives and Research Collections at the University of York, is going to explore rare treasures including original scripts, memorabilia and unseen gems from Hancock's Half Hour and Steptoe and Son. And in fact, as you might have noticed, we have an additional treat for you this afternoon. I can introduce the actor and chair of the Goon Show Preservation Society, Richard Usher, and Richard's going to be reading from a brilliant script you might have seen in the news over this weekend. We can now announce that we've recently found 3 completely unknown and missing Goon scripts from 1954 in the archive. So Richard is going to be premiering one of those archives this afternoon, one of those scripts this afternoon. So what I'm going to do first is hand over to Gary before the reading by Richard, and then hopefully, time-wise, we're going to have an opportunity for questions as well, but we will see how we go. So Gary, over to you.
Okay, good afternoon everyone. I'm your warm-up act, let's just face that. So, I'm going to talk you through the Galton and Simpson archive and some of the things that we've found within it. The tale, from my point of view, actually starts in June 2021, so it's just over 4 years ago, when, in the wake of acquiring the archive of York's own Frankie Howard, I had an email asking me if we'd be interested in talking about Galton and Simpson's archive. It was exciting at that point, I realised, but I also realised at that point it would be a challenge. So in September 2021, I took a journey down to London, and I went to Ray Galton's house, which was just next to Hampton Court Palace, and then through the grand rooms that were beautifully decorated into the cellar, which is where I normally get stashed on these occasions. And I'm presented with that room there, which was a room full of filing cabinets and a corridor outside that was full of files of contracts and correspondence. Everything meticulously catalogued by Ray with a system that gave them a number order so you could find things. The contacts all together and kept beautifully. Take a step back, we were told that it would be something we'd have to purchase. We were told the price. And when they got me up off the floor, I decided that it was going to be a steep hill to climb, but that we couldn't say no. 4 years and no small amount of effort and emails later, we're nearly there. And you can see a picture there of Ray and Alan's archive with us at the Borthwick Institute here at the University of York. And it will be, when we finish the fundraising, and yes, we're going to mention that a couple of times, come on. It will be the largest philanthropically funded acquisition we have ever done. It's no small boast to say that this is the kind of archive that normally you would have expected to go to somewhere like the British Library in London. And I'm incredibly proud that we've been able to secure this for the North. So, moving quickly on, I'll just do a little bit. We've had, as part of what we've been doing, we've had a video made by a really brilliant PhD student. I'll just play you the first few minutes just to set the tone of the afternoon.
Ladies and gentlemen, we present Tony Hancock in...
Hancock. Well, it's a fine idea, Tony. Now we're starting. You promised patients give me a complete show by 8 o'clock. I gave you all the money for the act out of my own pocket. What have you done with it all?
When they wrote Hancock's Half Hour back in the late 1950s, Two British comedy writers, Ray Galton and Alan Simpson, literally invented the genre of television situation comedy. Hancock's Half Hour first started as a BBC radio comedy in 1954, but when it switched to television in 1956, it became the first popular TV sitcom. It is no exaggeration to say that pubs would empty in time for Hancock's Half Hour on the BBC.
A pint is a perfectly normal quantity to take. You don't seriously expect me to believe that? I mean, I came in here in all good faith to help the country. I don't mind giving a reasonable amount, but a pint, that's very nearly an armful.
And, of course, after Hancock, Galton and Simpson went on to write Steptoe and Son, which was one of Britain's highest rated and most important television shows of the 1960s and 1970s, leading to two major feature films. But that's not all. Later, the American version of Steptoe, called Sanford and Son, became a massive hit on the other side of the Atlantic and was particularly important in the history of American television, as it was the first major network comedy show with all black leads, arguably becoming the first to do so. So we should never underestimate the importance of Ray Galton and Alan Simpson. They were the outstanding British comedy writers of the 20th century, and their work has had a profound influence on generations of comedians and comedy writers ever since. From Red Dwarf to Alan Partridge, no other 20th century writers made such a huge impact on British popular culture.
So, to take the story back to its beginning, Alan Simpson was born in 1929 in Brixton and worked as a shipping clerk before they met, and Ray Galton was born in 1930 in Paddington and worked for the Transport and General Workers Union. And the thing that brought them together was a dose of tuberculosis, which took them to Milford Sanatorium near Godalming in Surrey. They shared a cubicle with a gentleman called Tony Wallace, who was an electrician and radio hobbyist and made a makeshift radio broadcasting system for the hospital. Alan and Ray, because they were young, were put in adjacent beds, and it led them to writing together. And what we have on the screen is the first thing they ever wrote. That is from a show they did called Have You Ever Wondered, which was the first thing that they did together and performed together on the hospital radio programme in Milford Sanatorium. One of their favourite homegrown series of the time was Take It From Here, which starred Jimmy Edwards and Dick Bentley. The writers were Frank Muir and Dennis Norden, and they received a letter from Ray and Alan with some ideas. They sent that on to someone called Gail Pedrick, who then sent it on to the Take It From Here team. And at that point, Ray and Alan put together a sketch called Captain Henry Morgan. This is it, from November 1951. This was left on a desk, and it got them noticed by Derek Roy, who thought it was actually quite good and said, I'd like these two lads to write for me. And that's how they started writing for BBC Radio. There's a quick clip here from this edition of Take It From Here.
Now look you men, today we sail from Dover in search of Spanish gold. This trip is going to be dangerous. Some of you might not come back. So if there is any man amongst you who doesn't want to go with me, let him raise his right hand.
And so Morgan put to sea with the best left-handed crew in the business.
That's the first thing they ever wrote. It's not bad, I'll say that. That led them working with Derek Roy on Happy Go Lucky, with Derek Roy and also an up-and-coming comedian called Tony Hancock. The show, Happy Go Lucky, is universally agreed to have been a failure. But when Dennis Main Wilson took over, he kept Galton and Simpson as the only writers after sacking everyone else. And it was the first time they were paid as full writers. They got 40 guineas a show. And with that first pay packet, Alan bought a typewriter and quit his office job. That is the typewriter. It's in the Galton and Simpson archive. There it is. That is what all the things were wrote on. We know that the way they worked was that Alan did the typing, Ray walked around the room, and if they got really stuck, they lay down next to each other on the floor until they got out of whatever funk they got themselves into. After one of the editions of Happy Go Lucky, Tony Hancock came up to them and, making reference to a sketch they'd written about a children's party, said, "Did you write that sketch?" And they nodded. Hancock just said, "Very funny," and walked away. And that's where the seeds of British comedy were sown. A few weeks later, Hancock invited them to write 5-minute variety sketches, again, for his appearances on Calling All Forces, for instance, and actually was offering them half his fee of £25, which was a reasonably good whack. The show Calling All Forces evolved into Star Bill, which had Tony Hancock as the lead. And from that, and it was during the recording of Star Bill that Galton and Simpson pitched a new idea, which was going to be a show that didn't have musical breaks, didn't have obvious comedians coming on and doing their act, and didn't have any of the trappings of variety. It would just be, if they like, a story-driven, character-led comedy that was an extended sketch. There was quite a bit of resistance and scepticism of the idea in the BBC. This had not been done before from their point of view. But Dennis Main Wilson supported it, and on the 1st of May 1953 said, "I believe we can entertain most of the people most of the time without having to drop our sights, either intellectually or in terms of entertainment." And that led them to be given a 6-episode series for Tony Hancock. We know what that was. It was Hancock's Half Hour. That is the first script for Hancock's Half Hour from Ray and Alan's archive. You can see now most episodes of Hancock have a name. Originally, though, they were just numbered, and there are various versions of names that go around. So if you look in the Hancock books, it's often the first radio episode is often called The First Night Party, but you might be able to see that in the script itself, Ray and Alan call it The First Night Party. Or they call it Lord Dockyard's Flat. So the first episode of Hancock's Half Hour aired on the 2nd of November 1954. There are, between that first writing for Derek Roy and the first series of Hancock's Half Hour, 108 files of scripts in the archives, which just gives you an idea of how much material they were turning out before they got to that point. The cast included Sir James, Bill Kerr and Kenneth Williams, and an incredible but true fact is that each script was conceived, written and then delivered within a week. In 1956, so only 2 years later, Hancock's Half Hour transferred to television. Still a new medium at that point in time. And the initial BBC TV series reaction was actually quite lukewarm. It didn't really pick up. But by the third series, which came less than a year later, they had their run extended to 13 episodes from the original 6. And from that point on, Hancock's Half Hour became the benchmark for British sitcoms. Most of that Ray and Alan wrote did make it to screen. There are very few unfinished or abandoned episodes, but there are some. The one I have on the screen here is from a completely unmade episode of Hancock's Half Hour for television. Now, some of these missing Hancocks have been remade for radio. Some of you may have heard them, voiced by Kevin McNally. But as far as we know, the TV ones have had very, very little attention. This one on the screen is entitled Teenagers, and the situation that week was that Sid and Tony would try to blend in with youth. And goes about as well as you'd expect, obviously, down a coffee bar. And in the end, basically, they fall asleep halfway through a youth event and decide that they'd rather be grown up at the end. So there are about 6 or 7 files. Some of them are to the stage of they were ready to shoot. So the notorious one is called the ITA Quiz, which is Sid James is hosting a bit of a Who Wants to Be a Millionaire style game show. Tony is on and keeps winning. And that got pulled because it was too close to some real life events to do with game shows and cheating. So that some are like this, a first draft. Others are all the way through to the story that you know. In 1960, Hancock dropped Sid James. Because he was wary of becoming, as he put it, Laurel and Hardy. He was getting more and more needing the attention on himself. So the last series just goes out as Hancock in 1961. This is the one where, even as Ray and Alan say, most of the things that people recognise come from. The Blood Donor, the Bowmans, the Radio Ham, the Lift, they're all in that same small series in 1961. Before filming The Blood Donor, Hancock suffered a car crash after finished shooting The Bowmans. It was quite a nasty crash. His head actually went through the windscreen and he was really quite ill. But they still made The Blood Donor a week later. So it's a fact that some people may know but some don't, is that for The Blood Donor, Tony Hancock is reading off cards just out of shot. And once you know that and you see his eyes, you can actually see that that's what he's doing. He then started to use, this was the start of where Galton, Simpson and Hancock drifted apart. Obviously it ended quite dramatically when Hancock broke up with them and his agency and his agent, Beryl Virtue, shortly afterwards. And as Galton noted, this became a habit and Hancock never learnt lines again, and it started quite a sad time in his life, and we know how it ended. I'll just take you through then this, which is the first draft of The Blood Donor, which exists in Ray and Alan's archive in its entirety. This is the bit that you would probably recognise, a pint. That's very nearly an armful. What I can say from when you look at the script in total, it's remarkably complete, this bit. They knew it. They knew that exactly what they wanted this moment to look like, and there's only one little alteration where they add "for anybody" in the last line. But what we can see is how the story changed. So I'm just going to illustrate this from a couple of short sections from around this point in the script. This is the first draft. Ray and Alan worked by typing over things they didn't like. So they'd just type it over with an X on that typewriter. But it's easy enough to see what's underneath it. So you can see how they've argued between themselves as to what will be funnier. And it's just an example of them kind of instinctively knowing what a funny word is. And it's the kind of thing you probably can't train. So he says, first of all, I've made a mistake, I'll do something else, I'll join the civil defence. Then when the doctor says he's rhesus positive, rhesus, they're monkeys, aren't they? What are you implying? How dare you? I didn't come here to be insulted by the likes of you. Now, at some unknown point, it could have been seconds later, you can't tell, it becomes this. They decide that traffic warden is somehow just funnier than civil defence. They insert how dare you, they move it up because they think it kind of needs to be there to get that umbrage. I didn't come here to be insulted by you legalised vampires, replaces the likes of you, which then becomes a legalised vampire, singular. And you can see there from that final image what a lot of the draft scripts from Galton and Simpson look like. It's a living process. You can see how they've worked. You can see the ideas bouncing off each other. Not every writer is like that. Many writers might just get rid of a draft when they're done with it. But for Ray and Alan, you can see moments developing. Sometimes they are just exactly as they should be. Other times, something new. So after the split with Galton and Simpson, after the split with Hancock in 1961, Ray and Alan never wrote for him again. As kind of a peace offering, the head of entertainment at the BBC, Tom Sloan, offered them an unprecedented deal. They could have 10 half-hour slots, full creative control. They could write it, they could cast it, they could do what they want, but just give us 10 programmes. That was Comedy Playhouse. Episode, and the way that Ray and Alan kind of got ideas together is they would just throw words around. And the story goes that they were saying they wanted to something. To whatever, to this. And so one of them said, to Rag and Bone Men. And that landed, and that became the fourth episode of Comedy Playhouse, which was called The Offer. That, obviously, as we know, became Steptoe and Son. It was inspired by real slang that they'd overheard in a pie shop, and they had a lot of suspicion that they could sustain it over 30 minutes. So it became this father and son dynamic. There is the script for Comedy Playhouse number 4, The Offer. That is the genesis of Steptoe and Son. That's a shooting script rather than a draft. So you can see on the left-hand side, it tells you the camera angles and which camera will be doing what and what it will look like. So you could recreate it based on that, effectively. It would look near as damn it that was transmitted. Galton and Simpson insisted on dramatic actors and not comedians to play these roles. So that's what leads to Wilfred Brambell and Harry H. Corbett playing the characters. Halfway through the filming of it, the head of entertainment, Tom Sloan, said to them, you know what you've got here, don't you? You've got another series. And they were very, very reluctant because they didn't want to get committed to another long-running programme. But they did it with one stipulation that they thought would never happen. They insisted that they'd only do it if Harry H. Corbett and Wilfred Brambell said they'd do it, and they did. So they were kind of strong-armed into doing it. The offer aired in June 1962 and kicked off Steptoe and Son. And in fact, Galton and Simpson assumed it wouldn't work and went off on holiday, and they were actually in Spain when Harry H. Corbett tracked them down with a newspaper to show them how big a hit it was. It became another benchmark sitcom. It had viewers in excess of 20 million. It pioneered the fact that you can have comedy and pathos and drama together in one. If you watch The Offer, the end of it is really, really strange because the audience don't know whether to laugh or not when Harry H. Corbett is saying, I've got to go, and he's trying to shove the car out and starts crying. No one had done that before, but Ray and Alan did. The programme was actually so popular that Harold Wilson, the story goes, delayed the transmission of a Steptoe episode to avoid disrupting election turnout. And here we don't have many objects. We've got the typewriter, but we've also found in the collection, Laura, take the credit for finding it, is Harold Steptoe's scarf. Harold Steptoe's muffler. It's stained nicely, which I think gives it authenticity. And I refute any accusations that there's a photograph out there of me wearing it. Steptoe and Son ran until 1974 in two series. There's a series in black and white, then it comes back in 1970 for a run in colour. And it also produced two films, Steptoe and Son and Steptoe and Son Ride Again, in 1972 and 1973, respectively. On the screen, we have some continuity shots taken for Steptoe and Son Ride Again, which is some of the, not much visual material in the archive, but this is a good example of it. I decided to be nice to you and not give you the one of Wilfred Brambell in the bath, holding the box of Flash over his middle bit. And the script on the left, if any of you remember the one with Leonard Rossiter, The Desperate Hours, that's the first draft for Desperate Hours. By 1967, Steptoe had ended its initial run and was repeated heavily, and as was the thing at the time, they began to talk about moving it to the United States. And in the archive, we have copies of telegrams that document the development of what became Sanford and Son. There's an attempt at Steptoe and Son in 1965, which doesn't work. We have the film cans for that. It hasn't been released on DVD. But they came back to it later on in 1970. And you can see here the process of getting Red Fox, as it says here, is one of our funniest black comedians. And if it works out, NBC will allow us to do the series with a black father and son, which in my opinion would make it smashing. We then get this telegram. NBC agreeable to black cast stop. They are superb and we are most excited. That is where Sanford and Son, as you know it, begins. Sanford and Son in America is huge. It runs until like the mid-1980s. There's a couple of spin-offs, and it is really well received because it's showing life, after as Galton and Simpson said it, as it actually is. Some of the resistance to Sanford and Son being a black father and son running a junkyard was the fact that the NBC was only happy producing it if black characters were accountants or doctors or something like that. So it was still a leap in America to have a program like that. Incidentally, a couple of the other character actors that they were looking at if Red Fox turned it down, it says, we will talk to Pleasance and Cusack. Donald Pleasance and Cyril Cusack? Can you just imagine Donald Pleasance doing Steptoe and Son? Doesn't work, does it? So that's the kind of the story we know. Steptoe and Son happens. There's a few more. There's another couple of series of the Galton and Simpson Playhouse, and then Ray and Alan part on very amicable terms in 1977. But what about the things that could have been? Often this is the things that attracts people when you think about archives. I'll just skip through a couple of the things we found of the projects that didn't happen. First of all is the American series of Hancock that nearly happened in 1992. It would have starred John Lacarette, who was in a program called Night Court at the time. The script was written. It was an adaptation of The Blood Donor for American audiences. John Lacarette passed on it very late in the day as he thought it was a bit too similar to the character he was playing in Night Court. But if you can see it on the screen there, you've got some attempts of how you Americanise The Blood Donor. There's a whole new start to the episode, and then it goes into the one you know. And you can see that Cup of Tea and a Biscuit becomes OJ and a Fig Newton in America when you after you've had that prick on the end of your finger. But there you go, there's Don Larroquette from 1992, and that's what it could have looked like. So it nearly happened. The other one is the Unmade Hancock films. The crux of the split between Galton and Simpson and Tony Hancock was the fact that they were trying to follow up the success of the first film they'd written for Tony Hancock, which was The Rebel, Call Me Genius in America. It's well known that 3 ideas were worked up, one after another. The first was called The Brothers, which was an English adaptation of the Oscar-nominated French film The Sheep Has 5 Legs. And Hancock would have played a man with 4 brothers, each of whom was successful in a different business. Tony tries his hand at each and manages to ruin them all. The Day Off is very much a meandering one about a bus conductor with his day off, and all the hilarity ensues through bumping into people and misunderstandings, and that became a full stage play in January 2012. But the second concept is basically unknown, barring its title, and that's called Winter in the Sun. After Hancock split with Galton and Simpson, he went off and made The Punch and Judy Man, which is his second film. It's not quite as well received, and it's start of that downward slide. But the Hancock film that didn't happen was Winter in the Sun, the script for which, such as it is, exists in Ray and Alan's archive. Winter in the Sun, the concept is that Tony Hancock is on a cruise. He's on a round-the-world cruise, and you can see how this is going to go. You've got him going to different countries, mixing with different people, and basically annoying everyone around him. Galton and Simpson wrote 37 pages of this script before Hancock said he didn't want to do it, and they had to stop work. There are some interesting ideas in this that aren't worked up, one of which is that Tony Hancock would have been portrayed as a militant vegetarian at one point at dinner. And after the point where they run out, where Tony says he doesn't want to do it, you can see that they try and retool it for different artists. And the 2 names that are on the later notes of scripts, the handwritten notes, you can see at the bottom of the screen there, the 2 names are Frank and Arthur, or Frank or Arthur. And knowing who Galton and Simpson worked with, it's possible that the Frank might have been Frankie Howard, and the Arthur might have been Arthur Lowe. So, using the magic of technology, I have recreated, to some extent, the opening few minutes for you of what Winter in the Sun might have looked like. You have a large ocean liner tied up at Southampton. Passengers are making their way up the gangplank. At the foot of the gangplank, an officer is standing with a passenger list ticking people off. And the sign advertises that this is the RMV Apollo Mediterranean cruise to Valencia, Naples, Palermo, and Tangier. The gangplank is pulled up, and the Apollo is gracefully pulled out into the Solent by 2 tugboats, and a growing gap forms between the ship and the dock. The captain is issuing instructions to the crew. He takes binoculars from the lookout and peers through them, and from the harbour we see a tiny motorboat travelling at great speed towards the liner. One figure is waving frantically. The motorboat gets nearer, and we can now make out Tony in the back of the boat waving frantically. A set of steps are let down the side of the liner by a couple of ratings. An officer is standing by, and Tony appears at the top of the steps. Excuse the impression now. Sorry I'm late, the alarm didn't go off. Yeah, it's an old one. The hammer doesn't quite reach the bell. When you're dozing, it's all right. You can hear the vibration. When you're asleep, you've had it, really. At this point, Tony thanks the boatman, and then he's asked for his fare. And when asked for his fare, he realises his money's in his luggage. Awkwardly, he turns to the officer for help, with no luck. He glances round all the other passengers, but they quietly drift away, leaving him stranded and unpaid. So that would have been the first couple of minutes of Winter in the Sun. We mentioned Arthur Lowe. One of the other unmade shows from Galton and Simpson is Bunclark with an E. This was going to be made in 1973 and would have starred Arthur Lowe and James Beck, who were appearing together in Dad's Army at that point in time. The project of Bunclark with an E began in December 1972 with the idea of adapting old Hancock material. This obviously is in the days before video. So how do you remake and share your material again? You redo it. The idea was to adapt old Hancock material and Arthur Lowe was suggested for the lead. By February 1973, a pilot had been agreed, with hopes for 2 full series of 13 episodes each. There was a key meeting on the 21st of March 1973 on board Arthur Lowe's boat, the Amazon, which was moored up at Teddington Lock, with Duncan Wood, their producer, and James Beck. Rehearsals were from the 11th to 17th of May at the BBC's Acton rehearsal rooms, the Acton Hilton as it was known. And the pilot episode, based on the Hancock story, The Economy Drive, was recorded at Television Centre on the 18th of May 1973. The BBC took up its option on the 7th of June, but reduced its commitment to just 6 episodes. Tragedy, though, struck when James Beck died suddenly on the 6th of August 1973. There was we know, so you can see piecing the archive together from correspondence, script, and also Ray and Alan's appointment diaries for 1973 on the top left, there was one final meeting between them. And at that, Arthur Lowe was shaken and superstitious, said, "These things come in threes. First Tony, then Jimmy. We're not doing it." And at that point, that was the end of Bun Clark with an E. So, from what we know, that show exists in the BBC somewhere, but sadly not in Ray and Alan's archive, just to put that rumour to bed, which still does go around. And so, just to bring us to one of these other things that we found in the process of going through the archive, is that the title for this session is now wrong. It should really be The World of Hancock, Steptoe and the Goons, because in interrogating the archive, as part of our good archival practice of checking things match against the manifest that we got, we found that there is Goons material written by Galton and Simpson. We all know, most people know the Goon Show. If you don't know it, you've got about 5 minutes to read up because you're going to get some. Was already running in 1950, by this point in 1954. In 1954, from the date when these scripts originate, the Goon's on its 5th series by this point in time. It's a bona fide hit. It's at the peak of its powers. At this time as well, the writers' agency Associated London Scripts has just come together. Associated London Scripts is set up by Spike Milligan and Eric Sykes and Galton and Simpson and Frankie Howard. The thought being that rather than paying an agent 20%, 15, 20% for everything, why don't we just pool it together, represent, if you like, ourselves and have a fund for if any of us hit hard times, we can support each other. Quite a radical idea at the time anyway. Ray and Alan are 2 new writers. They're still just about to dive into doing Hancock. The Goon scripts that we found are for a programme that was called Midday Music Hall. And in 1954, that's a nice shot of Gilbert Harding there. In 1954, Midday Music Hall was broadcast over lunchtime, only half an hour long, and the structure of it was that they would have a resident top-of-the-bill comedian for about a month. So in October 1954, that resident top-of-the-bill comedian is Peter Sellers. And it is for these programmes that 3 Goon Show sketches were written. So this would be probably the end of the show, from what we know. There were 3. The one is called The Cane Mutiny. The second is Sherlock Holmes and the Case of the 2 Raised Fingers. And the third is just called Cowboy Sketch. But you could call it Hop Along Cassidy, if you like. Midday Music Hall was broadcast live, and there are no recordings for Midday Music Hall at all. So when you put the archive together, when you put the scripts that have been written for all the shows that Ray and Alan are doing, we can put together the chronology of how all this came about. So this is October 1954, and what I've done here is I've interleaved the Galton and Simpson material with the Goon shows that have been written. Because the key question is, why are Galton and Simpson writing these? And is it them? Or is it actually Spike? We'll come to the second question later on. Here you can see the Goon shows that have been recorded. This is recording, not transmission date. So you can see there's some of the big names here. And if you know your Goons, you've got the dreaded batter pudding hurler of Bexhill-on-Sea, the phantom headshaver of Brighton and the affair of the Lone Banana, are all happening over this period. In between that, you can see in pretty short order are these sketches that Galton and Simpson write for Peter Sellers. In fact, it's such a chaotically busy period for them. This is the 30th of October. This is one day, one Saturday. You've got the rehearsal for the first episode of Hancock's Half Hour, the first night party, happening in the Camden Theatre, while at the same time, the third Goon Show sketch that they wrote is being broadcast. And then 5 minutes, halfway through that, they start the recording for the first Hancock's Half Hour. So that is just how busy they were. I think it's fair to say they probably weren't there for at least one of these events. So how can we be sure that they wrote them? Because that's a fair question. People would, we have to kind of be sure of this. And I'll say that I am kind of 99% sure it is Galton and Simpson that wrote these Goon Show sketches. The key giveaway comes down to the output from that typewriter we saw earlier on, which is identical between scripts they have in the same file for other productions. It's the same typography, the same layout. The real giveaway for me is this dot and line at the end of a script that appears on theirs, and I've checked against the copies that are in the Goon Show Preservation Society archive that we hold at the Borthwick, and that's not on those, so that was a bit of a sigh of relief that I've not got too far down this. And also, there are annotations. It's very, very, very faint, and you probably can't see it, but there are pencil annotations on there, and the handwriting matches with Galton and Simpson's. So from that, I would stick my neck out and say they did this. The key question comes down to why, and I think that's reasonably easily answered. You can see the amount of Goon Show material that's going out. That's a half-hour show every week doing that series. We know that the writing of the Goons was an immense pressure on Spike Milligan. They have all just moved into the same offices above a greengrocer's shop together. And it looks to me that Ray and Alan are saying, look, we don't start our Hancock programme for another 3 weeks. Shall we just help you out and we'll do these? These were unknown. They were in a folder marked Peter Sellers Assorted Sketches. And it was only when leafing through, and thanks to my dad who's in the audience knowing the Goons, I was able to go, hang on a minute, that's a Goon Show. So at that point, we thought it would be quite nice if we didn't let them linger in the archive unheard. So we're going to hand over now, take ourselves back to October 1954, and hear Richard, Peter Sellers, introduce Sherlock Holmes and the Case of the Missing Two Fingers. I've been told there's a line I need to do to get us in the right headspace, so this is the BBC Home Service.
Oh, that's better. Thank you, ladies and ex-miners. This afternoon, I had intended to give you a selection from the tales of the Vienna Woods. But unfortunately, I have since learnt that Max Miller has already worked them on Henry Hall's guest night. So instead, I have decided to give you a short dramatization of one of Sir Arthur Conan Doyle's lesser-known works, Sherlock Holmes and the Case of the Two Raised Fingers. Madam.
The scene, London's Baker Street one afternoon in midsummer. Galloping cautiously through the thick fog is a hansom cab. The driver is quite good-looking, too. Standing in the back is a tall, dark, handsome pygmy with blonde hair tinged at each side with distinguished grey ears. At 22 Baker Street, the passenger alights, presses half a crown into the cabbie's outstretched hand, and rushes inside the house. A wise move. The fare was 3 and 6. He arrives outside the offices of Sherlock Holmes, the well-known detective of the same name, Hern. Come in. You'll find the mat under the key. Don't you mean the key under the mat? No, it's a big key. Are you Sherlock Holmes? Are you from the gas company? No? Speaking. My name is Bloodnock. Major Dennis Bloodnock, retired. When? Just before we went into action.
Would you care for a cigar? No, thanks. I've got one on. Yes, it doesn't fit you very well, does it? What can I do for you? A crime has been committed. Who did it? I have no idea. I'm sorry. I cannot take the case if you're going to withhold information. Good day. Spraggle me conkers. You don't understand. My house has been bungled. Don't you mean burgled? No, it was built by the council. But you're right. There has been a robbery. My wife's first stole has been stolen. Oh, that's not too bad. My wife was still in it. Oh, I see. Can I have a description? Certainly. It's a large, hairy thing with a long tail that I smuggled back from India. Oh. Well, we should be able to trace her. Now, what does the first stole look like? Holmes, I beg you to take the case on. Name your own figure. Zsa Gabor. After you. Just a moment. I will call you my assistant. You'll like him. He's one of the greatest brains in England. Dr. Watson.
Yeah?
Ah, Watson. This is Major Bladnock.
I know. I've been listening. I glued my ear to the keyhole. Oh.
Well, leave it there. It does stop the drafts. How are you getting on in the laboratory, Watson?
Well, I made a detailed examination of that corpse you brought in today. But I'm afraid there was nothing I could do.
You mean?
Yes, he's dead.
I suggest we get over to my house right away. It's getting dark. Yes, it happens every night around here. Come on, chaps, let's jolly well go. Rickshaw? Well, here we are, Bladnock Tars. I'll ring the bell for my butler. He hates ringing it for himself.
Hello, what you selling? 2 dear. I can get 'em down the lane half price with a bill for double the amount for the income tax already, ain't it?
Ah, Jeeves, I'd like you to meet Mr. Sherlock Holmes.
Holmes? How do you spell it?
Brown.
Why do you spell it like that?
I'm in disguise. It was just then I caught a glimpse of Holmes's uncanny powers of deduction. No. This man Jeeves has a mole on his left shoulder, 2 scars on his right leg, a birthmark on his stomach, and has 2 toes missing on his right foot.
Amazing. How do you know?
You haven't got any clothes on.
Mr. Holmes! Oh, I think I found some clues.
Where?
In the wardrobe. Oh, I made a joke. Oh, clues in the wardrobe.
Wow! Come, Watson, Bladnock. I want to search the entire house.
Well, we found nothing, and I turned the whole house upside down.
You blithering idiot! Now we're standing on the ceiling. Come on, let's go upstairs to the basement.
Here, my life, look, there's a body under the piano.
Who is it? The bald head, that beard, that cauliflower ear. Penelope, my dear wife. Oh, speak to me. Why don't you speak to me? She's dead. That's no excuse for rudeness. Oh,
look what she's got in her hand, a bottle of arsenic.
Don't touch it. It might be poisoned. This looks like a case for the police. I heard you call me, my captain. I heard you call me. Enter a PC blue bottle of the bow-legged runners. Tries to strike unbow-leg pose, but have left unbowed legs at home. Officer, there has been a murder. A murder? You mean someone has been deaded? Of course. What other sort of murder is there? More Yiddisher murder? I don't wish to know that. Do not be feared. I will find the dreaded murderer. I have examined the room with my super high-powered Brian Reese magnifying glass. Toot, 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 toot. And there is no doubt about it. What? It makes everything look bigger. If it will help you to find out who did the murder, I can tell you his name. Major Bloodknock did it to collect the insurance. It's a lie! It's a lie! And if it wasn't for the fact that you're telling the truth, it'd be an even bigger one. Oh, how did you find out? Elementary, my dear Bloodknock. You left a note pinned to the body that reads, I killed my wife. Signed, Major Bloodknock. Curse! It's always the little things that give us away. Stand back. I have a gun. But that is a water pistol. I'll drown the first man that comes near me. Arrest that man, officer. Yes, I will. Thinks. Me? Arrest him? Little blue bottle? Arrest the dreaded dangerous criminal? Little weak, scrawny, undersized, cowardly blue bottle? He will squirty water on me and I will go rusty. Rotten, dirty, stinking, smelly water. It's clean water. It won't be when it's wiped off me. Constable, I demand you arrest this man at once. All right, I will. I will hit him over the head with my flint at the flying squad cardboard truncheon that I got in exchange for 6 family-sized cornflake packets. Tries to stand like George Raft in I Am the Law television series with legs apart, but slips on highly polished floor. Legs come off and fly up the passageway in different directions. All right, you've asked for it. Look out, he's picking up that meat axe. I am not frightened. I have my highly reinforced, special steel, undentable policeman's helmet. He will not hurt me. He will not... Ow! You rotten swine! You might have waited until I put it on. My buns is split down the middle. I don't like this game. Sticks 2 halves of buns together with bubble gum, sticks it on back of bike, goes home because late for choir practice. And so ended another case successfully solved by Sherlock Holmes.
Hey, wait a minute. What happened to Major Bloodknock?
Oh, he collected the insurance money, and today he's leaving to sun himself in the south of France. Watson, wouldn't it be wonderful to get out of this London fog and go to the south of France?
Oh, yeah.
Are you insured?
Yup.
Good. Ready, laddie. The ship leaves in 5 minutes.
Yeah, I'm ready. South of France, here we come. Wow, April in Paris. Wow, chestnuts in autumn. Holiday tables under the trees. April.
That was the Goon Show. The script was by Ray Galton and Alan Simpson. It was performed by Richard Usher. The sound design was by Richard Usher. And the producer's probably me. Yeah, thank you. So there you go. You're the first people to have heard that in 71 years. Hope you enjoyed it. And there's 2 more where that came from as well in the archives. That brings us to the end of the speaky bit of this. I hope you've enjoyed listening to both the talk and the excellent performance by the multi-talented Richard. I just wanted to end on sort of answering a rhetorical question, which is, what's the point of all this? What's the point in collecting these archives other than them being funny? And I'm hoping we've kind of demonstrated that today, from being able to use modern technologies like artificial intelligence to bring together things like missing films to life, from the creativity of Richard in restaging and reperforming this. It's not just about keeping paper in a box, in a room. It's about making it live, making it live, and engaging people of all ages around the world with the joy that Galton and Simpson brought us. But we have time now for questions. So thank you very much for coming, and thank you very much for being so enthusiastic.
Thank you so much to both of you, to Gary and to Richard. That was fantastic. Really, really appreciated that. As Gary says, we do have about 5 minutes or so for questions.
Thank you. That's absolutely brilliant. Can I say, is it something about the pressure of performance? We've got both Tony Hancock and Wilfrid Bramble, really major drink problems in their lives. But not Galton Simpson.
I don't know. It sounds. I mean, you're a performer, Richard.
Yes.
Yeah, not with the problems.
Yeah. I'll be getting my barrel later. Yes. I think pressure of performance is quite a strong thing, because you do have you have a duty to deliver performances at a top level, every week in, week out, and to rehearse all of those and get them right, and the duty to bring the words to life. It is bringing words to life. Whatever you do as an actor or performer, whether you're a comedian or whatever, you've got a duty to stick to the kind of the words that are written for you, and sometimes that can be quite a pressure and quite an undertaking. So I can imagine if you're not quite getting it right, you might just think, I'll have maybe something just to relax me or something like that, and that can easily get out of hand. I mean, you can read multiple biographies and autobiographies of actors and comedians who, just have, I'll just have something to steady my nerves in the wings kind of thing, and and it spirals from there, really.
I think the other thing is that at that point in time, it's new. Suddenly for Tony Hancock, that exposure from being on radio to being on telly, it's massive. You're talking, it's 20 odd million people watching you every week. It's a lot of pressure, I guess.
It was very, very good. I really enjoyed that. Thank you. I've seen recently quite a lot of the Steptoe ones. They seem towards the end not to be as good or powerful as the word. Do you think they were kind of running out of steam at the end? Is the quality control not quite consistent? That's just my view. Potentially. It's something that's worth investigating through the archive, because you've got all these contracts and correspondence at that point in time. As a lot of TV writers would say, that their main job is to make sure that there's not 30 minutes blank screen every week. So there's an element of, I guess it is churning it out a little bit. We do know that Galton and Simpson do come back to ideas. I don't know if that's a sign of desperation or just not letting a good idea go to waste, because we found an unused skit that was written for Christmas Night with the Stars. If any of you remember that being on, often popular programmes would turn up. Steptoe and Son appear in 1962 and 1967, and we found one that's dated 1963, the end of which is the same as the Steptoe and Son one, where they try and have a party, and it turns out they all get chicken pox. So they've obviously mined back through that. I mean, there has to be a reason of why you keep an archive this big. It is big. It's like a whole aisle, isn't it? I guess it's because it's that repository of ideas and things you can come back to and rework. I mean, by the mid-70s, I mean, they eventually part. I say it is genuinely amicable. Alan's wife dies, and he says, I've had enough. I just want to, I don't want to do this anymore. So Ray goes on and keeps writing. He writes with Johnny Spate and John Antrobus, and keeps writing. So maybe there is something in there. That's all happening roughly at the same time. They are always doing the comedy playhouse ideas, but one of them actually set in York. It turns out. But they never take off. So it could well be that after writing solidly the amount they turn out from 1951 through to 1975, I guess you are going to get to a point where you just think, what's new?
Thank you. I'm interested in the process of what happens when you get the material in the archive. I could imagine you spending all day long sifting through this stuff and having a good laugh, but surely it can't quite be like that.
I mean, it's a living.
I was going to say, you want to be honest with this. Be honest, go on.
No, I mean, yeah, all right, I've had to have a look at it. You've got to check it all checks out. And, I have said to you on a few occasions, it's absolutely outrageous that they're paying me for this. Don't tell them that. I mean, I'm happy taking it. The whole point of it really is that we are building this collection of writers that are from Associated London Scripts, and it is such an important period. It's before that happens, comedy is of a certain kind. It's, like you say, Max Miller, it's someone on stage delivering their act. Within 10, 15 years, you've got situation comedies like You Know It, and you're right the way through till the 90s before that changes with something like The Office. I think the whole point is to allow people to have that ability to experiment. Also have that magical ability to actually hold the thing. It will be fine if you want to come in and look at the blood donor and hold it in your hand. Absolutely fine. But it's going to be a springboard for talent. I mean, if you look at the video that we showed at the start, that's been done by a first-year PhD student. She's actually from Dubai. She's never heard of these things before. And it was the ability for her to get into it and be inspired by it. And she was saying, this has given me so many ideas. So it's using this material as a springboard for other people to do stuff. I mean, people are still performing Shakespeare, right? So that is where this can happen.
Fantastic. So, I mean, all that's left for me to do is thank you once again to Gary Brannan and to Richard Usher for that fantastic session. Thank you so much for attending York Festival of Ideas.